Chicken on a Stick presents Persistence of Vision. Welcome to the first episode of Persistence of Vision. My name is Patrick, and I have a question for you. What is your favorite film of all time? This is a question I've been asked many times throughout the years, and I find it incredibly difficult to answer, as I don't have one film I consider my absolute favorite. Persistence of Vision is a series where I'll be sharing with you some of my favorite films of all time. Starting with my favorite comedy, 1959's Some Like It Hot, directed by Billy Wilder, who co-wrote it with longtime collaborator I.A.L. Diamond. It stars Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, and Marilyn Monroe. This film is often considered one of, if not the best comedy of all time, as well as one of the best films ever made, leading it to be one of the first 25 films preserved in the National Film Registry. To first get started, we're going to talk through the film. We open on a hearse being chased by the cops in Chicago, 1929. The hearse turns out to be fake, used by bootleggers to transport alcohol during Prohibition. The cops follow them to Mozzarella's funeral parlor, which is a front for a speakeasy owned by Spats Colombo. Tipped off by Toothpick Charlie, the detective gets inside, and this is where we first meet our leads, Joe, played by Tony Curtis, and Jerry by Jack Lemmon. They are musicians in the band playing at the speakeasy. They manage to escape when the cops raid the place. Desperate for money, Joe, the straight man of the duo, decides to sell their coats. They head back to an agency building to see if there's any more work. After being told no a few times, one of Joe's flings tries to get back at him by saying there is a job. They come to learn it's for a saxophone and bass player, which they are, but they need women. They end up taking a different job, but have to borrow a car to get there. As they go to pick the car up from the parking garage it's at, they witness Spats Colombo and his gang members corner Toothpick Charlie and kill him. They get seen and barely escape. They then call up the agency and pretend to be women to get out of town. We next see them dressed as women to board the train. Taking the names of Josephine and Daphne, they become close with the singer of the band, Sugar, played by Marilyn Monroe. We get a song, Runnin' Wild, as well as we learn that Sugar has a past with saxophone players in male bands. Once in Miami, Joe creates a new disguise to try and win Sugar over, Millionaire Jr. of Shell Oil, while Daphne draws the attention of actual millionaire Osgood Fielding III. We get another song, I Want to Be Loved by You, sung by Sugar. She is in a hurry to meet Junior on his yacht, which Joe managed to get by having Jerry take Osgood dancing for the night. Here we get a scene of Joe acting as though he is impotent, which Sugar tries to help by kissing him, multiple times. The scene is cut to show Daphne and Osgood's date as well. We see them dancing and having an increasingly good time. Once the night is over, Joe returns to his room to find Jerry happy because Osgood proposed to him and he accepted, with a plan to divorce shortly after to get money out of it. While everything mostly seems to be going positive, we see that Spats Colombo has showed up in Miami to attend a Friends of the Italian Opera conference, a front for the crime syndicate to meet. Joe and Jerry notice Spats and decide they need to leave. Joe calling Sugar as a junior, telling her that he had to leave, which breaks her heart. Then they use Osgood as a mean to escape, by having Daphne call him and ask to be taken away on the yacht. During the call, Joe goes to see Sugar one last time as she sings the final song, I'm Through with Love. He kisses her and leaves. They get found out by Spats and chased around, ending up under a table during the meeting of the Mafia. At this meeting, Spats and his crew are killed similar to what they did to Toothpick at the start. Joe and Jerry run to get chased by new Mafia goons. They manage to escape, but just as they are getting on the boat with Osgood, Sugar joins them. Joe and Sugar kiss, while in the front, Jerry tells Osgood that they can't get married, eventually revealing he is a man, to which Osgood says, nobody's perfect. Billy Wilder first approached Tony Curtis with the role of Joe, saying it would be alongside Frank Sinatra and Mitzi Gaynor. After Frank Sinatra didn't show up for lunch with Billy, he looked elsewhere and found Jack Lemmon. The studio didn't think Lemmon was a big enough draw. Marilyn reached out to Billy, wanting to do the film, having previously worked together on 7-Year Itch. Once Marilyn was on board, they were able to get Jack Lemmon to play Jerry. Part of Marilyn's contract is that her films have to be in color. However, when Billy saw how Tony and Jack looked in color with all the makeup on, he wanted to do it in black and white. It also helped with the period setting. The voices that Tony and Jack use in the film are interesting. It might not be something you realize the first time through. Jack Lemmon was able to do a higher pitched voice when he was speaking as Daphne, whereas Tony struggled to do so. Uncredited in the film is voice work from Peter Fries, who dubbed the dialogue for Josephine. Tony says it was a mix of both of their voices together. For Junior, Tony said he took Cary Grant's voice and manipulated it. Tony worked with Cary Grant on another film released in 1959, Operation Petticoat. Marilyn Monroe was pregnant with Arthur Miller's child during filming, which is why for most of the marketing of the film used a body double and superimposed her head later on. Marilyn had many issues while filming happened, reportedly showed up late to shooting all the time with many different excuses. For a number of the scenes she took 40 plus takes. It was so bad multiple times Billy Wilder wrote out her lines and placed them in front of her on set so that she could get the line correct. Jack Lemmon said he never had issues with her, but it drove Billy and Tony mad. For Billy, because it was one of the reasons it took longer to shoot and went over budget. For Tony, he felt the more takes it took, the worse he ended up looking, as they were going to take Marilyn's best take, not his. Ori Kelly did costume design. He was originally there just for Marilyn's dresses, but ended up doing them for Jack and Tony as well. Jack Lemmon said the script was the best comedy script he had ever read. When the film first screened, no one laughed and many people walked out, not realizing it was a comedy. They were told that the film needed to be altered. Billy only cut one scene, a short moment on the train between Jack and Tony. At the next showing, everyone laughed. The final line, "Nobody's perfect," was in the script as filler, to be changed later. However, they got to the end and filmed it. It received one of the biggest laughs Billy had ever heard. The film was released without the approval of the Motion Picture Production Code, known as Hays Code. The Hays Code, for those who are unaware, were industry guidelines for self-censorship of movies. It was in place between 1934 and 1968. It eventually faded out and led to the MPAA rating system we still use today. Some Like It Hot did not receive the approval because of its LGBT related themes, including cross-dressing. The success of Some Like It Hot is often considered one of the reasons the weakened Hays Code was replaced. The Catholic League of Decency called the film morally objectionable, claiming it promotes LGBTQ+ lifestyle. It was banned in Kansas for the love scene on the yacht, and marked adult only in Memphis, Tennessee. According to some, the film wasn't taken seriously when it came out, getting mixed reviews, though opinions on it changed over time. The catalyst of the plot of the film, when Spatz and his crew kill Toothpick Charlie, is a reference to the real-life St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which happened in Chicago in 1929, possibly involving Al Capone's gang. Filming for the second half of the movie took place at Hotel del Coronado in California, which still stands and looks the same as it did in 1959. My history with the film starts not too many years ago, and I can't tell you exactly why I purchased a copy of Some Like It Hot when I had never seen it. I must have heard somebody speak about it or suggest it as a film to watch, so I went in with no expectation. I was laughing the whole time, and it's easy at first to think that this might be a more serious film with how it starts. The Mafia, Speakeasy, Spatz Columbo, it's all played pretty straight, with a few lines of snappy dialogue. It's said on the commentary that Joe and Jerry are similar to great comic duos, such as Laurel and Hardy and Abbott and Costello, which while watching it back is completely true. Joe's a straight man, smooth talking and always has a plan or thinking of a way to make a quick buck, while Jerry's the funny man who gets pulled along for the ride and often gets the laughs. Jack Lemmon, for me, was a revelation in this film. I can't think of many, if any, films I'd ever seen with him before this. It makes sense that he would be nominated for many awards for this role, and that Billy Wilder would go back to work with him many more times over the years. The writing of Wilder and Diamond for this is fantastic. Every small detail is important, and it's easy the first time not to catch how clever it really is. Between quick back and forth, such as, if they find out, it'll be goodbye Charlie, goodbye Charlie, which is called back later on when Toothpick is gunned down, goodbye Charlie, to the running comment of type O blood. This rewards the viewer who pays attention to minor details. Music is used similarly. We get the songs that Marilyn sings played back to us in other scenes to help show the emotions. Speaking of the songs, the 3 songs in the film that Monroe sings show where her character is at during that part of the story. From Running Wild to I Want to Be Loved by You, it is a way to show her mood, which is also shown in the small details of her drinking throughout the film. When she is in love with Junior, she turns down drink, whereas before, and once her heart is broken, she goes back to it. Joe's a sleazy sax player who we see at the start of the film working his charm on women to get what he wants. Sugar tells Josephine that she has a thing for sax players, and that they're all the same. Joe sees that as his chance, but over the course of the movie, his deception and selfish motivation changes as he actually falls in love with Sugar. Jerry, being the funny man, early on has to be reminded, "You're a girl." He repeats that to himself, eventually leading to his engagement to Osgood, at which point he has to be reminded, "You're a boy." Speaking of Osgood, Joey Brown, who plays Osgood, is a delight. He plays the part so well, his delivery of, well, nobody's perfect, at the end of the film, I believe, is part of why that is so beloved. While the story unfolds at the hotel, it's easy to forget that almost an hour ago there was a plot about gangsters and being on the run. As Walt Disney said, just when everything looks like it's going fine, bring back the Wicked Witch. Spatz and his gang show up in Miami, and this brings back the reason for our leads to dress like women and to be on the run to start with. as well as the detective that followed them along the way in connection to the shooting of Toothpick Charlie. Not one thing as the film goes to waste. We even see shortly after Spatz arrives what at first seems like nothing more than an extra, a man in a wheelchair getting off an elevator. We see them again later on as Joe and Jerry take their clothes as a disguise. With all the wardrobe changes our characters go through, we get a moment when Joe, who switched from Josephine to Junior, nearly forgets to take off his earrings when meeting Sugar. This comes back with Jerry. While they are disguised as a man in a wheelchair and a bellboy pushing him, Jerry forgets to take off his high heels, which gives them away. Spatz is played by George Raft, who is well known for playing the roles of gangsters in films. He certainly looks the part of a mobster, with a nickname based off a physical clothing article that he wears as a signature, Spatz. Just like in the start, our leads find themselves in a situation where they are hiding from the mafia, just to be witness to a killing, as Little Bonaparte, the leader of the mob, has Spatz and his crew killed for what they did to Toothpick Charlie. This time, though, the detective and the police are right there, so they seem to finally win. One last time, Joe and Jerry change into Josephine and Daphne, meeting Osgood, and get ready to set sail. Sugar chases them down. She doesn't care that Joe is a no-good saxophone player. The deception is over for both of them. Joe gets Sugar, and Jerry? Well, that's left up to you. The faces that Jack Lemmon makes throughout the film are worth paying attention to. As the audience, we are in on the con, so like Jerry, we see when Joe is making sly comments to Sugar or others. Jack Lemmon in these moments gives good comments, but even better faces. So what makes this my favorite comedy of all time? Having seen this many times now, even when watching the commentary in the film again just before this, I still laugh at every joke. I find myself catching new things I never noticed before. It is wrote in such a way that there is no real loose ends. If something is brought up early, there is likely a callback to it later on. Sometimes obvious, sometimes not. Some Like It Hot is as perfect of a film as I can imagine. When I first saw it, I was shocked that such a film was released in 1959. It deals with topics that even today people find too touchy or taboo. I suggest this movie to everyone I can. If you ever want a film that you can turn on and enjoy, there is no doubt that this is a perfect pick. If you want something that rewards paying attention, this film does that in spades. Marilyn Monroe is a larger-than-life name that many know, but likely have not watched any of her films. If you haven't, this is a good one to start with, as she would tragically pass away only a few years after this film's release. As quoted by Sam Wasson, "A good time. Not a phrase we readily associate with the famously heartsick Marilyn Monroe. Seeing her so happy must have been fun for Some Like It Hot's 1959 audiences. But for us, knowing what we know about her depression and self-loathing and death, watching Marilyn truly enjoy herself is today the movie's most painful pleasure. When she calls back, 'Good night, honey,' I'm probably not alone in feeling, in addition to delighted, very sad. And not because we lost Monroe a great artist, she wasn't, or a great beauty, she was, but because, in Some Like It Hot, it's clear she was, at times, abundantly capable of enjoying life." Thank you for listening to the first episode of Persistence of Vision. My name is Patrick, and Some Like It Hot is my favorite comedy of all time. Now, this first episode is not perfect by any means, and I'm still trying to figure out my actual vision for this series moving forward. But as Osgood Fielding III would say, well, nobody's perfect.